And
That's I was going to
that's
ask you about that as well. Like there are like these things, all like you go down this laundry list of problems, and it's like, fuck, that sounds tough. But you go talk to somebody else in a different industry, they have a laundry list as well. Do you
yeah.
see one of those as being like do you see like the bartender life being like a more struggle involved with that or like a little bit harder because that laundry list is like ratcheted up a little bit? Like we're talking about drug use, alcohol use, like not getting enough sleep, like all these things that are, you know, pretty problematic resoundingly in terms of the data. But do you think it's like, well, office worker Joe has his own things. I'm a bartender. Shaun has his own things. We both just got our own things. We're just trying to get by.
I'm I'm not going to take anything away from policemen, firemen, EMS, anything like that. I'm only going to give this as an example. If you're let's just say a cop. If you're a cop, and let's just say you're a cop that carries your gun at all times, even when you're not on duty, are you ever not a cop?
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting question when you think about it. You take your gun to bed, this and that, but skip the gun. Think about when a cop goes shopping and he looks around and he's got his head on a swivel and he's always looking if there is someone doing something weird, if they're out of place, if there's a drug guy, if somebody's shoplifting. Like a cop is always doing that. As a bartender, do you do the same thing when you go out to a restaurant? You probably do. Shit, they didn't clear off table 7. Oh, table 3 is mad.
Yeah.
I just watched the mise en place guy come out and say no more orders. We're up to 40-minute ticket times. And as a bartender, you never turn that off.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of careers. If I'm working on a car at the body shop, when I leave at 5 o'clock, I get to turn that off. I'm not worried about the muffler. I'm not worried about whether or not the parts came in, or even working in the office. Like, unless you're bringing your job home with you, you get to turn that off. Bartenders, it becomes much more of a personality. You don't really turn it off. Just like a cop, just like a fireman. Like, there's jobs where you can't turn it off because it becomes part of your personality, because it molds you to look at situations from that lens of bartender. So
Is
I
everything
never,
okay? Like in a restaurant, in a service place, like is everything going well? Like that's
and
how you're a successful bartender, right? Like doing that. So you can't just turn it off. You're right.
I've eaten at Michelin star restaurants, quite a few of them. A couple in San Francisco, La Bernardin down in New York City, obviously, um, in Bully Boy Bar, all kinds of crazy places. Anyway, um, you never ever ever get to take a break from this. Even when I would come home as a husband, you'd still had your bartender face on.
Hmm.
And it didn't help that my ex-wife also was a bartender, so we both had our bartender faces on. But you never turn that off. You find yourself at a family function at Christmas time. You're all of a sudden you're washing dishes.
Yep.
You're
You're
you're,
the
you're
one
helping
busting the
plate things.
table for
Hey,
sure.
you want Jack and Coke? No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Oh well. Oh, you know what? I'll make you a martini. Like, and because there's 30, because if my mom made it, it would take 10 times as long.
And it might taste
So
crappy. Yeah.
it, it,
You know.
it would probably taste awful, to be quite honest with you. It'd be terrible. Um, but but we don't get to turn that off. So I think that the unique challenge of bartending is, yeah, I think it is harder than the average job in a lot of ways, specifically psychologically and mentally. It's
Yeah.
really tough to divorce yourself from the personality of bartending, because it becomes your psyche. That's just who you are. Whereas, again, if you're a welder, again, nothing against welders, I'm not saying, when you're done welding for 8 hours a day, you you take your welding torch and you put it down. We
Hmm.
don't take our bar spoon and put it down.
Hmm.
I think it was Marcus Aurelius, and I'm probably misquoting. He says, "What a, a swordsman is not always a swordsman. A boxer is always a boxer.
Hmm.
He's always got his gloves.
Right.
He's always a boxer. A swordsman has to have a sword.
Yeah.
We are more like boxers, pugilists. Like we always have our gloves at all
Hmm.
times. And so, yeah, I think it is a far more difficult career than people give it credit for if you don't recognize that you have to create the space for being, in my case, I'm Shaun Mcguire, and then I'm Shaun Mcguire, the bartender.
Hmm.
And those are, while those, if you don't create the space to make those two different people and they become one person, you're Shaun Mcguire, the bartender, 24/7.
Which
And
is not going to get you to a good place in your life and your relationships and your future, right?
facts, 100%. I am a living, breathing example of that.
So is that the number one piece of advice you give to people when they come to you? Or is it more because that's like an overarching thing. That's a big thing that's going to have, it's going to be, I don't want to say
That's
trickle
gonna,
down, but
that's gonna,
yeah.
yeah. That I think uh, the overarching piece of advice that I seem to always come up against is boundaries, and that's boundaries with your bosses, that's boundaries with your family, that's boundaries with you know your work life balance, what you will and will not allow people to do, and boundaries with yourself.
Hmm.
Um, what you are willing what you are willing to sacrifice personally so that you can make enough money financially to also continue to do the things you want to do personally.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think that is probably the overarching. I find that if you're even personal boundaries, if you're trying to be the bartender and be yourself, you have to be very hard on yourself too, where you don't live your work.
Yeah.
Like I do the reverse weekend. 2 days a week, I don't drink at all.
Yeah.
I will, and don't get, you know, full transparency. I like to drink, like,
Hmm.
but
Same.
I'm I'm hard on myself in that 2 days a week. I don't touch a lick of alcohol. I won't have a
Yeah.
beer. I won't, I wake up and I just like usually Mondays, and then Mondays is like my last work day. I have Tuesdays off, and then usually I pick a weekend day because everybody's having fun. I want to continue to have fun while not drinking,
Hmm.
and I want to kind of prove to myself. I'm sure there's some psychological issue where that proves that I'm an alcoholic. Fine, whatever. I'm an
Yeah.
alcoholic.
Well, those
Um,
definitions are pretty, as we kind of got into before, like
I'm
pretty hard to apply them to bartending, serving, service industry
I'm,
life, you know?
I'm big on harm reduction. Um, if I know people that drink 20 drinks a day and can't go a single day without a drink, being able to take 2 days off a week for me is great. For
Yeah.
somebody like that, they'd probably go into an alcohol induced coma and have to be brought back. So I wouldn't go. You don't want to compare yourself to everyone else. You kind of want to compare yourself to who you want to be and what your ultimate goal is. And if you feel like shit and you're drinking too much, be like, hey man, take it easy on yourself. Oh well,
Mhm.
but look at him. He drinks 10
Yeah.
drinks a day. Yeah, what he does is what he does.
That's
What
him.
you do, yeah, comparison is the thief of joy. You really
Right.
want to be better for yourself. You don't have to compare yourself to anybody else.
So how did
Even
you, so it sounds like structure or like rules is important to you getting on the rails, or not on the rails, but like establishing this in your life. Like it's 2 days a week. So you hear about at the beginning of the year when everybody's making their New Year's resolutions. It's like the goals that you need to have need to be measurable is one of the things, and achievable. Like there's three things. I forget what the third one is. 2 days.
uh,
Like how did you come up with the 2 day program? Like what is that something you advise other people to do? Like
yeah,
set hard boundaries like that?
so I have I try and set myself up with a 12-week plan for
Okay.
different goals. Um, and so over 12 weeks is whatever 84 days, and then I actually just started a new quarterly. It's a quarterly plan, and I said I want to do 30 days this quarter where I don't drink at all.
Hmm.
So 30 days over 12 weeks, we do that math. That's 2.5 days, but then there'll be a couple weeks where I have to do three. Um, and I just reverse engineer that backwards. Like that could mean like there might be a week where nothing's going on, and I just say, I don't want to drink it all this week, or I'm going to take 5 days this week. But the point is that if this time I'm going to do 30 days, then maybe the next quarter I do 35 days because it's a little more of a challenge. Um, and you just reverse engineer back from the goal. I did have this idea, the principles of fives, um, with like a little V, and it's like, what do you want to do in the next 5 hours? You start 5 years from now, and then you have 5 hours, and then you come together in the V. So it's you got 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, and then 5 months, and then 5 years. So where do I want to be in 5 years? What am I going to do in the next 5 hours that's going to get me there? That's going to yield 5 hours to the 5 weeks, or 5 days, 5 days to the 5 weeks, 5 weeks to the 5 months, and 5 months to 5 years. If my goal is to have $100,000 in 5 years, then back it up and reduce it down to that means I have to put, I don't know, in the next 5 hours, I have to put $25 away, which means $25 times 5 days is 125 times 5 weeks is, whatever, $625, 5 months is
Right.
blah, blah, blah. And that kind of builds on itself, incremental steps, because you only have so much willpower,
Right.
but it's a lot easier to have willpower when you don't have to think about it. If you
Yeah.
break it down into a minute step, if I want to do 100 push ups a day, I could get up and do 100 push ups. And eventually I'm just going to get so tired of it first thing in the morning, I'm not going to do it. Or I just set my alarm where every hour, over 10 hours, I do 10 push ups.
Mhm.
And I just have my alarm, it goes off every hour. And you don't even notice that because it's 10 seconds. If you're doing those minute things, and at the end of the month, you did 33,000 push-ups. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of
Right.
push-ups. And you feel like you actually accomplished something. But being be I think willpower, a big part of willpower is being structured
Yeah.
and knowing what you're going to do. Like they tell
Well,
you,
setting
if
up
you want to go to the
guardrails for
gym,
yourself, you know,
yeah, if
that,
you want to go to the gym in the morning,